We're all misfits.
All right, you ragtag bunch of misfits.
You're a scrappy little misfit, just like me.
Biggest bunch of misfits I ever set eyes on.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Full Goon Squad in the house. Hi, guys.
Hola.
What's up?
Hey, Hunter,
You
what's
notice
behind the...
anything different about me? Hold on. No. Don't
okay,
do
what
that.
about you?
You notice anything different about me?
You weigh like
Feel
175
taller
now?
in the frame.
Yeah. So Ted posted a clip from last week's episode with Paige, and I indeed did look significantly smaller than I wanted to, so we upgraded here.
It's ravioli.
I did have ravioli muscles yesterday.
Imagine feeling like you got to increase your fucking size on a screen for the podcast.
Well, listen, so we've talked about this before. I hang out almost exclusively with people that have like 19 packs, but most of you are like 3 feet tall. So I feel like my stature, sure, you're one of the people that has both. Congratulations.
You're the second
You're not
shortest one in the
CrossFit size.
group, aren't you?
No.
Aren't Sherb and Ted taller than you?
I don't
I think Drew and I are about the same height.
think Ted is taller than me.
Yeah.
I got 3 inch
Sherb
lifts.
is taller. Yeah.
Sherb's
Sherb
taller,
thinks he's
but dumber,
5'2".
so it doesn't count.
The only person that says he's shorter than he is that I've ever met in my life.
5'9".
Okay.
Easy guy. I'm 5'9" on an insurance document somewhere.
Best middle school basketball team.
My dad shrunk like 9 inches throughout his life. It's like, I'm 5'10", I'm 5'11", I'm 5'9", I'm 5'8", I'm 5'7". I'm like, geez, dude.
5'19".
5'19". I worked out yesterday. I'd like to put that out into the universe. I did not work out for 2 weeks. I was sick, and then I had no
When we're at
childcare.
Max Snatch Day.
Hit that applause button.
No, we had the woo. We had the little burner with the muscle up plus 8s.
The 9 muscle ups, or 9
No.
ring dips, as everyone said.
It's a muscle up plus 8. That's what it was.
That's what I should have wrote. 1 muscle up plus 8 instead of
Yeah.
8 ring dips.
Yep. And I knew
Was it hard?
no. Well,
Your face.
I meant the workout, not that specific thing.
you know that I didn't do the actual workout, but I did guess correctly and what I should like swap in terms of timing. But I
What
knew
was your
that
version? Just lunges?
No, it was bike muscle up plus 8 ski. This is basically machine and back. And I knew that the only transition that I had where I didn't like send it was round 2 into round 3. I knew that if I sent the ski and the bike that something might happen on the dips. So
What would happen?
I would go slower. I didn't want to. But I did.
all right.
I knew I was going to get Fran Long from that workout just because it's winter and I didn't work out for 2 weeks. So I had to promise myself before I started that I wasn't allowed to think about how I felt during the workout. And then afterwards I could be a baby and tell people of how brave I was. But during the workout, I just fucking went for
Proud
it.
of you.
And I can tell you that 2 packs of cheese ravioli 24 hours before
Check
ring
over.
dip day you should do it. I had some pop.
That's the pre-workout.
I had some fucking pop. I had some glycogen stores in those triceps. It was
I
lovely.
got some toots.
Nah, not me. That's my life chat.
You got
I worked
Sherb.
out and ate ravioli, and I'm taller than I looked last week.
So proud of you. My 7-month-old is starting to crawl, so that's terrifying. He's crawling around the house, which sounds like a cool thing. It's like a milestone for a baby, but then like life instantly sucks way worse because he's going to get into everything and put everything he can find into his mouth because everything's a chew toy when you're 7 months old. So we spend the entire time making sure that my 3-year-old does not pull his tires off his little toy cars. So that the little
And
one
feed
will
him to
eat
him?
Yeah, basically. Basically. So
Come here,
like,
kiddo. How about some nice Yokohama tires?
they're about yay big, and they're like perfect, right?
Like
Down
those
size
tires are
Sprint pipe.
delicious, bro.
Like a really delicious
Sam had me.
Michelin.
I can say I've had me. So that's cool. I mean, watching him do that, kind of figuring out how to move his body around. But he's supremely motivated by food. So like, there was a bit of kibble on the ground, like 10 feet from him. Kibble's the
Feed your kids.
no. The dogs were in the basement. There was a piece of dog food across the way, and he tried to crawl over it and put that in his mouth, and I had to fish that out of his mouth. So that was fun. Yeah,
I
motivated by
would
food.
believe that you feed your kid at least in a dog bowl.
He's crawling. It's the perfect height.
It's the easiest way to feed
I
him.
mean, that's where my mind went for sure.
Life chat. So the same workout that Drew was so brave in, I did.
Thank you.
20
Thank you for
I did-
acknowledging my bravery.
You're welcome. Yeah. Let me know how it was after. We could talk more about it after. That same class, I had a pretty horrendous snatch day, and then I started that workout and I tripped after my 21st double under. I threw my jump rope across the gym and I left.
I saw it on your chair.
one of
I
the
saw it
first
disheveled on your
times.
chair.
Yeah, one of the first times I've had a rough enough day where I just I quit the workout, but is it quitting if you were 11 seconds in?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe not. So yeah, it was a shit. That was a shit day. Wouldn't have said that if you hadn't talked about that
brave you
workout.
were.
But other
Someone was braver than someone else. Yes.
less
I won't say who.
less. Maybe I got to get a higher chair for my podcast. It'll change my mindset.
It might.
Life chat finally broke a long, probably a 5-game goalless drought in the old men's league hockey. Netted 2
slap
G-notes
shot
on
kid?
Saturday. Yeah. No,
You
no
didn't-
clappers.
So you told me this yesterday, but I didn't get. I need a breakdown. I need to know what the goals were like. What's the situation?
Fucking Steve Eiserman cross center line.
Yeah, there were at least 2,000 or 3,000 fans. Everybody at Biddeford Ice Arena.
Chicks everywhere.
On chicks everywhere. A lot of signs. A lot of. No, I think there was maybe 2 people in the arena who weren't playing hockey.
What kind of level is this? Like, is there good players in this league, or are you just playing with a bunch of
There are actually a
dads?
couple. No, well, it's. I mean, on average, it's a
Mix,
it's
right?
men's league. There are a few players who played at actually a collegiate level. There's a league in Portland that's actually reserved for former collegiate or and above. So there are players who are either semi-professional or in some instances actually played in the NHL. This league is a little bit chiller. All under, I think under 40 years old is when the divisions start, or over an over 40 league. So it's not super competitive, but it's not nothing.
Fuck you, 40 sounds real youthful.
Could you play? Could you play in the other league?
To be honest, I've never actually played in the league, so I think I could. I would be an average, below average player in that league comparatively, but yeah, it's a pretty fast league. I've seen a couple games. Would I say I haven't seen it? I haven't played in it. I've seen a couple games and they move pretty quick. But we played in a tournament a couple weekends ago, and I'm facing off against. We're one of my buddy Jake, who's the one who set it up. He has an affinity for talking it up, how great we're going to be, how much fun it's going to be, how sick our team is going to be, because we got all of these kids who we played high school hockey together or against each other, and we get out there, and I'm taking a face off, and I'm facing off against a Maine Mariner, and I'm like, God fucking damn it, God damn it, Jake. And there's 4 Maine Mariners. And for the listener, the Maine Mariners are the local professional hockey team. They're in the East Coast Hockey League, which is a level below the American Hockey League, which is a level below the NHL. But still good players. And there are a
cross 'em
few
up,
kids
kid?
who play yeah, no, did not. Won the face-off, though, so got that going for me.
Fucking nerd.
But there are a couple of kids who play like either at UNE or USM who will jump into those leagues before their actual season starts. So there's some competition, but
Drop gloves guy?
Talking about hockey, this is a
No,
conversation that I had with Al recently, one of our members.
yeah.
His life goal is to make Maine hockey great again, and turns out they didn't need him quite yet. They went from unranked to like 20th to 13th to 9th. They
What,
went
who?
Maine. Maine is 9th.
Maine?
University of Maine is 9th in the college
Wow.
hockey rankings after not being in it at all for a while.
Did it have anything
Yeah.
to do with this member that you're talking about?
Nope, it doesn't at all.
Congratulations
So-
to him.
He scored the winning goal.
So when I was growing up, Maine was like the perennially one of the best hockey teams in the country, and like I went to the Frozen Four a bunch of times to watch them play. They went 42-1-2 one season. Supposedly there might have been some recruiting infringements, but I don't give a fuck. It was basically an NHL team playing against like high school teams. But yeah, they played Boston College, was the number 1 ranked team in the country, and they beat them and tied this weekend. So go Maine
Sick.
hockey.
Yeah, I haven't paid it too much attention to collegiate hockey this year. A little bit more.
Supposedly
in the
it's had a massive resurgence, and it's better than junior hockey again.
NHL. Nice. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
good
because
news.
they actually will make kids play junior for like that 18-19 season before they get recruited. So you end
Yeah.
up with these like 25-year-old monsters playing against, some other schools that have a bunch of 18-year-olds.
Yeah. Unfortunately, for better or worse, if you're Division I hockey in the United States is not the most direct path to the NHL. If you're a legitimate prospect, you're probably playing in either the USHL, which is like the North American Tier 1 junior league, or you're playing in Canada. Not quite.
Supposedly
the
that's
same,
changing though.
What's that?
Supposedly that's changing though.
Is
A
it?
lot,
Yeah.
especially for like the mid-level players. Obviously
Yeah.
the kids that are already phenoms, they don't need that.
Yeah,
but-
for sure. Little bit more mid-level players still coming out of the best college hockey programs, but in general, most of the rising
Okay, so I'm
stars
gonna
in the NHL.
I'm gonna bring Ted and Sher back into this conversation. Are the Patriots intentionally tanking? Question.
They look really good. They look really, really good.
Who is he throwing that ball to in the fourth quarter? I need
Fucking
to know.
Zolak guy. Throw it to
What?
Zolak.
What happened? If go to YouTube, anyone listening that doesn't know what I'm talking about, go to
don't.
YouTube right
Don't.
now.
I'm gonna do it right
and
now.
click 75% into the Patriots Colts highlights video, which could only be like 3 seconds long. It was game 10-6 or something.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, it was bad. Mac Jones threw an interception in the red zone.
That a middle
time?
school,
What was
that
the
a
time
middle
on the
school
game?
quarterback could have completed.
Oh, I don't
You mean I'm
know.
offline.
A couple minutes left in the game at that point, I'd say.
Oh, a couple
Yeah.
minutes left.
Yeah, like 4 minutes left.
Dude, what?
Gesicki was wide open. He throws
Do
the
you
ball
think
a
they're
little
tanking?
higher. No, I don't think they're tanking. I don't think that's within their nature
Bill
to do
Belichick
that.
going to get fired?
Yes,
Can
probably.
Bill Belichick get fired?
Yes, he could. It'd be a really poor choice because what's the alternative?
Josh McDaniels is looking for a job.
Matt
right?
Canada? See if we can get Matt Canada to fucking coach Patriots.
Bill Belichick is not as good as people think he is. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I always
I
did
think that-
wonder how good of a coach he was, or how good
He
it was
wasn't
to
very
be a
good
coach
before
with
Brady
Tom
was
Brady.
there. He almost got fired. He wasn't great with Bledsoe, and then he has sucked terribly since. Now, how much of that is their whole like
Personnel.
carousel of offensive coordinators? And I mean, they have a third string quarterback playing starting.
How high can that level of motivation be, though? You've already won however many fucking Super Bowls. Like, what do you still have a drive to go out there and be good? Or are you just like, hey,
He didn't
it's my
seem that
job now.
excited when they won, so I just figured
Yeah,
he was going to
yeah,
get.
yeah, yeah.
Status quo.
It's like
I think they could trade him for either a large amount of money or a player or something because of his stature.
Yeah, definitely.
What player would that be though? Who would rank in that category of player? Like if you were going to look at that,
You're
team,
asking the
I know
wrong
you-
person because again, I don't think he's
All right, ask me, Sherb.
All right, Hunter. Who are they trading Wes Welker, Bill Belichick for?
Marshall Falk.
Did you say
Matt
Marshall
2000.
Fuck?
Bringing him out of retirement.
Yeah.
I really don't know, Sherb. I don't remember the last trade other than John Gruden for Warren Sapp way back. I don't really remember anything like that happening.
I don't
in
think
the
it's
NFL.
a one player solution for them. Not one single player would make a difference on that team. They need to basically throw them all in the garbage and start over. Their defense is fine. I don't really have an issue with watching them play defense. They're a little bit slow in like the linebacker position, and they don't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback, but they play pretty well in the secondary for having a bunch of bums out there. Like, I don't know why Miles Bryant has a job. He might be the worst cornerback in the history of the NFL, but somehow he is their starting slot corner. But their offense just is a train wreck. It's just terrible. Like, there's some prospects that are good. Stevenson's probably going to be pretty good if he can get onto a team with some talent. Pop Douglas looks pretty good, but outside of that, there's
It was kind
nothing.
of sad because both running backs looked really good on Sunday, and then it's just like you can't just do that.
It's
in the
so
NFL.
weird to watch them play because they run block so well. They pushed the Colts around like nothing on the run with their run offense, but their pass offense is just like, all right, I'm going to open my hip. You guys just run back, do whatever you want back there. Is what it seemed like the entire game. It was pretty atrocious, and yeah, Mac didn't look good. He shook.
Thanks for
By the
tuning
way,
in
the
to
Patriots
NFL
defense
Weekly.
is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So I'm glad you like their defense, but they have given up
It's
like the
in
second or third
comparison
most
to the
touchdowns.
offense, Drew. It's
Okay,
in
sorry,
comparison to the offense. They look good for Patriots players.
Fair, fair.
Fuck.
Okay. Whoa, Ted, you got any live chats? We got any updates on calzones or what's up?
Feeling the pressure. We're hosting Thanksgiving, so like getting ready for Thanksgiving menu, and I've been kind of piloting a couple of dishes here and there that I want to maybe try on the day. But
Okay.
trying to get my head around what I can make early, what I can make, the day of, how I can make shit better. I have decided I'm going to spatchcock and smoke my turkey this
Whoa.
year.
You
So
naughty girl.
yeah, I'm gonna give it a
you
nice
call
little brine. I'm gonna spatchcock that bitch, and hopefully it turns out. Last time I tried to smoke a turkey, we ended up having Thanksgiving dinner at like 7:30
remember you texted me.
or 8 p.m.
I insinuated that you just wanted to drink alone in the driveway.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't hate that.
Yo.
Bring the solo stove out in the driveway.
There are
and have
tricks.
some brews.
There are tricks when you're hosting. So just getting a second for yourself.
I read a meme the other day that was like, on Thanksgiving, I like to get violently high and do the dishes because everybody thinks that I'm contributing. I don't have to talk to anybody, and no one wants to talk to me because they don't want to get stuck doing the dishes. So I'm considering.
Good strategy.
I always find myself a task to do at social functions for that reason. So I don't have to like stand around and
Make small talk.
make small talk, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. But no,
I'll make
feeling-
some small talk if I'm doing something, but I need to have a task.
Yeah.
The holidays are weird because there's like with your like nuclear family, like your wife and your kids, like the desire is just to stay home and be together. But like your relatives want to drag you all over the God's fucking green earth. And you're like, I'd love to just like not do that. Like, not so much with Thanksgiving. That's more of like a get together and eat together. But like around Christmas, my parents are like, come over on the 24th, come over on the 25th, come over on the 26th, come over on the 27th. It's like, no, I don't want to go for any of those days. I don't want to do any of that.
Yeah.
But-
the nice thing about hosting is no travel.
I prefer hosting for that reason for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm the vibes guy. That's what I bring to the table. Maya sees how high she can get her stress levels, and then I bring them back to a baseline. I don't know. I'm a utility player on Thanksgiving. I don't know what she's going to let me do. I don't know what she's going to ask for help on, but I just swoop in. She's like, well, how are we ever going to make the potatoes? And I'm like, I'll cook them.
Yeah. You cook them first, and then you eat
Yeah.
them. That's how
Yep.
it goes.
How are we ever going to make those potatoes?
So I'm utility player, show up for the vibes.
How far in advance does Maya make her menu? Is it like
already
6
made.
months in advance? Is it the year before?
she probably does it in her head sooner than she reveals to me, because if she talks to me about something that's not within the ADD window, she knows that I'm not going to remember a single word that she said.
Okay.
I'd be like, yeah, no, stuffing and things. Yeah. Like she
Stuffing.
is like asking me what we had at the house for certain things. And I'm like, I look through all of our cupboards and fridge anytime I eat. And sometimes I'm like, oh, look at that. That's sick. I didn't know that was there. That's amazing. And she's always like, what are you doing? It's the same stuff all the time. And I'm like, not for me. It
Could be
isn't.
different. Could be different.
Could be different. I didn't know that was in there.
I
That's
look
cool.
in the fridge like 35 times a day.
Do you expect to see something different each time you open it?
You never know. There's that condiment you haven't seen in a while.
So I totally forgot this last week. This is an apology to an anonymous source, but someone sent us.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot.
Someone sent us the "You Suck" pack of the "You Suck" bracelets that we referenced.
Where
from the
are
Duke-
they? I need
the
a
Duke
replacement.
quarterback.
Mine broke.
What happened to you,
I got a
big
whole.
fella?
I got a whole bag in here somewhere.
I suck too much.
Oh no, we
Suck
suck
less.
again.
So whoever sent those, thank you. I can think of a few people that would potentially send those.
Oh, this is a
I've had some
mystery
gym
sender?
members inquire about getting their own. I'm thinking about making a fucking competition of some sort. For
Yeah,
them.
we've got a bunch. And one thing that was sort of funny. So for anybody that didn't hear that episode, basically the kid wears one because his mom reminded him that he sucked because he was getting praise for playing a child's game. So he's the quarterback for the Duke football team. So it's just basically keeping yourself grounded when you're getting accolades, that sort of thing. And it's funny because if you hand it to the wrong person, and I'll explain who that wrong person is, he wouldn't mind me saying, if you hand it to the wrong person, it has the wrong effect. So when I got them, Ryan McKay was around and I gave him one, and we are working on Ryan's Ryan believing that he doesn't suck, which he doesn't. We're working on that. So if you hand it to the wrong person, so what I said to him was, when you're doing machine work and you're beating everyone in the gym by 9 hours, put the bracelet on and remind yourself that you suck. He promptly gave me the bracelet back and was like, I can't handle this.
Yeah, great idea. The one thing I feel really confident and good at, I'm going to make sure I suck during, and then everything else I'll...
Life
Yeah.
will be good.
Life will be good. So thank you to whoever sent those. Nice little reminder that we always need. We are technically, when you're listening to this, you will be in week 3 of phase 2. Week 2 is happening right now. I would like to cover some week 2 to week 3 transition advice based on the biases that we have within the program. If you don't follow our program, we'll make sure to get some nuance in there so you either understand what we're up to or this becomes sort of generic advice. So you found either a 1 rep max snatch or 1 rep max clean, depending on which track you're on, in week 1, and you got a taste of what the beginning of those progressions look like in week 2. I had a conversation with a remote athlete that went from like, you invented a new movement, I'm not sure what that is, in the 1 rep max snatch, to the 5x5 at whatever it was, 60-some%. And it was like, I want you to be thoughtful about your first pull in all 25 reps, which is actually pretty challenging when you're a CrossFitter. You're kind of used to, it's light enough, you can grip and rip. You can get your entire body way back behind the bar and kind of bend and snap a little bit. So the challenge was to do that. The video got sent back to me for that session, and they went from like D- to like a B+, A-. And what's really cool about the progressions in these 9-week phases is we're basically jumping up maybe 2.5% at a time as we're going through. So if we were to do 1 rep max snatch, 5x5 at 60%, and then be like, you fixed it, one rep max snatch again the next week. Obviously, that progression not only does not give you the strength adaptations and the neurological adaptations that we're looking for, but it doesn't really give you an opportunity to continue to prove to yourself in an iterative process that you can lift the weight like that when it is heavier. So when we get the opportunity to lift the same lift twice a week and just a little bit more and a little bit more, and the volume kind of ends up being very similar, because as we go up in weight, the reps go down in terms of total reps that you're executing on. And it's just this commitment to the belief that you can go a little bit heavier and move the same way. And you're going to be able to do that in the snatch or the clean. So as you're working through it and as you're filming yourself, or your coach is there, your training partners are around, hold yourself to that standard of, I'm going to pay attention to every rep, because there are a lot of them, especially at the beginning. And then it's a little bit heavier, I can continue to move the way that I'm supposed to move. And this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and a lot of people, I would say, outside of the program will like crank up the weight based on things like RPE or something like that as they're working through. I feel better today. The reason I like more of an iterative process is, again, like, it's a very technical movement. And this could be extrapolated out. Yeah, you do. And this could be extrapolated out to a ton of different movements. But in terms of phase 2, continuing to make that transition and go there, I think, is super important.
I think that advice applies to all levels too, because, exactly what you said about anyone following the blog is essentially the exact same advice I gave people in our class yesterday, because we're wrapping up phase 2 for Team Misfit, and we did an entire phase on the snatch. And we decided to use the every 2 minutes hit one snatch starting around 70% and build kind of iteratively across somewhere between 6 and 12 reps total for those athletes. And there are a bunch of athletes who are trying to understand the process. And I'm like, basically go heavier, go heavier, go heavier. And eventually you're going to fail a weight. Now, failure is not like missing one and then you're just done. So if you're like 6 minutes in, you fail one, like your day's not over, keep practicing. But if you get to a top end weight and you keep failing and you keep failing, well, then you found your max for the day. If there's still 10 minutes on the clock, you have 5 more opportunities to refine your movement. Take 25% off the top of what you just hit, or 20%, and keep practicing, because a lot of athletes just need exposure. And if it's more valuable for you to go back down and do tempo pull squat snatches because you found that you moved better during that movement, do that. Or if you want to go from the high hang or the low hang or whatever part of the lift you think you need the most work on, like, use the opportunity to accumulate reps to allow yourself to progress. Because I think it's a story we all tell ourselves. Actually having a conversation with Julia the other day about the freestanding handstand push-up course. So she's setting herself up to do put her head on an ab mat, kick up into a handstand, walk a few feet forward, come back down. And after a couple of attempts, she's like, I got pissed. And I was like, that's your ego telling you a story that you should be amazing at something the first time you try it. Like, that's not real. That is something you see on Instagram and you think is real, but it's not. It's falling over and over and over again. And whether that's freestanding handstand push-ups or snatches, you have to be willing enough to say, you know what, I got to figure this shit out, and it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight. And, the more complex the lift or more complex the movement, the longer it's going to take to develop that skill. So the key is having the desire to want to conquer a new skill, but being patient enough to realize it's going to take some time.
It's kind of funny along the lines of the affiliate class yesterday. I had my 6:30 p.m. class, and probably like halfway into the session, we've warmed up and everybody's starting to approach first pretty heavy attempts, or maybe they're at that 1 rep max and they're getting geared up, or they've failed at once. And I basically looked around, and I try to not over coach on 1 rep max days, especially when people start to get really heavy. I just try to keep it to a minimalist approach, just giving people too much to think about on a stressful day already. In terms of a 1 rep max can be overwhelming, but I watched 4 athletes almost in succession, completely unbeknownst to each other, but as the spectator, I'm watching, and I watch barbell gets pulled to the eyeballs, drop the bar. Barbell gets pulled to the chest, drop the bar. Barbell gets pulled to the forehead, drop the bar. Barbell is essentially overhead in a muscle snatch, and we choose not to get under the bar. I was like, I said this in a much more inspiring manner, but I turned the music down. I was like, listen, I just watched 8 of you fuckers pull the barbell to your eyeballs, and then you decided that you didn't want to snatch anymore. Get the fuck under the bar. Act like you want to be here. And everybody kind of like it was a again
Hashtag
it was
inspired.
like a positive like, hey, you guys are doing the work, you're doing 90% of the work, do the rest of it by committing to finishing the lift. And people kind of got a chuckle out of it and turned the music back up, and then a bunch of athletes were like, I'm just gonna snatch it, and they pulled themselves under the bar and stood up the lift. So I think it's just a good the fact that we're giving people two days per week to work on those sorts of things, I think is the right, gives people the right number of opportunities to practice that sort of thing and establish the movement pattern, so that when it comes time to do that, or to retest our 1 rep max, you have enough trust in your own movement. I know that's something you often say, Drew, is trust your movement. But especially when it comes to retest, you've put all of the work in, or if you're in the middle of a phase, just kind of put yourself, step back a little bit and realize like you have 2 days per week to work on this lift, with, the 1 rep max 9 weeks away, or a little bit less now, but trusting your movement is how you're gonna be able to realize that come 1 rep max retest day.
Barbells and weights talk to people, and it's like, no, they don't. That's an inanimate object sitting on the floor. It should have no, like, you slide 2.5s or 5s on the side, and the barbell's like, hey, I got an idea. As we start to pass the knees, let's just get wild and extend just immediately. I know that it's easier when it gets closer to your hip, but maybe you just don't have the juice. Maybe you don't know how to snatch. Maybe every rep you've done previously is no good. And it's like, I learned yesterday what I want to do when I retire. I want to get a lawn chair and put it in a CrossFit gym and just watch classes and sprinkle little cues here and there. That's what I want to do when I retire. And I want like one of those shitty, like metal chair with the cross woven like things, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
one of those. I'm going to wear
The real
sunglasses.
shitty beach chair.
And that's what I'm going to do. But just watching yesterday, it's like, man, that barbell starts to tell some fucking stories to people. It's like you've practiced this skill, showtime is here, and you're like, I have some new ideas on how I should snatch.
Kung Fu master sweeping the steps just outside all times, just passing a broom around and all of a sudden dropping some wisdom.
So we are working on our toes to bar. A lot of people are working on their toes to bar in phase 2. You tested... I will throw it out there. We've gotten some reports back on the test, and Hunter that checks a box of a challenging way. Apparently, the bike is horrendous in that workout. Like
I did this workout on Saturday with Tony and Ryan. I did 24 wall balls to a normal target, which was the hatchet modification, because Tony had to do
11 feet.
No, Tony did. Tony was doing so. Well, Ryan McKay did 11 feet at the 18 reps, but Tony doesn't have high enough ceilings in New York, so that when he retests, he's going to have to use 10 feet. And we just settled on like open, like tight, just regular ball, regular height. The bike, the bike sucks if you go too hard to begin to start. Like if you go out too fast, it'll make the workout really fucking miserable. But yeah, so if anybody's complaining about their toes to bar, I got mine in too.
The MFT version is the one that I got the most feedback on, so I'm not entirely sure, although it sounds like the hatchet.
Is it good?
Yes. So I convinced my athletes, and one of them was doing chest to bar instead of toes to bar, but I convinced my athletes to put down
God, that's
on
so
paper.
much fucking worse.
Put down on paper what you think your sets are going to be and what you think your bike pace is going to be, just as a little athlete IQ exercise. Mm-hmm. And I think because they were so intentional with their sets, they felt good transitioning into the bike. Like they weren't, they were cardioing the other part of the workout, and then they get on the bike and they're used to, holding whatever it is, 65 RPMs, and it says 60, and you feel like your heart's going to explode, and you're trying to figure out what that line is throughout the workout. So even people that did well thought that they did really bad just based on the feeling of what the bike was like during that workout.
Feels bad, man.
Yeah, I think like it was very deliberate to have such a short duration on the bike that it it doesn't matter all that much, but it definitely makes you feel like shit because it's such a short break between two things that take a little bit longer, like the 24
This is a
ball balls and the
sneaky
24 toes
6
to
by
bar.
24.
Well, we see
cal
that
bike.
all. Yeah, we see that all the time in competition and even in the open where like there's a movement in there where it's like 5, 10, 15 reps and like the movement that has 5 is a complete throwaway or the opposite where it's like so heavily weighted on 1 or 2 movements and then there's a third one in there that people are just like, oh man, that's going to be hard, and it's like that's a negligible part of that workout. So I think it was very intentional that the bike was like going to be is short enough just to make you feel bad or just not any better.
Yeah.
Did you do the workout, Sherb? Did you do it?
Nah, I did not
in
do
the
that.
program?
Nah,
Rest
didn't
day?
do that one. No, actually, it's funny
That's
you
a
say
wheelhouse
that
one for you.
yeah, maybe, I don't know. That sounds
He
pretty
paces it
terrible.
properly.
Those kind of workouts are traps for me because I'll start at 500 watts and then quickly be at 5 watts. But it's very similar. Honestly,
What were your athletes' times, Drew, or one or two who did? Did you have anybody who do the actual version, like as written?
Yeah, I had 3 times of the actual version. Male was 24 and change, I believe, and women were 27 and 28. So your theory on the cals staying the same because the target was lower might have been just a little off.
27 minutes, so 3-minute difference.
About a 3-minute difference, yeah.
Yeah.
And the 2 scores that I got were from potentially the 2 fittest people. So,
Okay,
well, and then I mean, with the fast times, Austin, and he's, he'll hit you with the best score on the entire blog, and then maybe not the best score on the entire blog, depending on the day and the warm up and things of that nature.
That is interesting because, like, if
the Echo
So,
bike is
total-
just such a that both women are. You can guess who they are. They're about 5 feet tall, both of them, and Austin's a fucking giant meat pie. So,
yeah, I'm just trying to
physics.
think though. Like 20. So if it were it would have been at most 7 calories. Or
I would have made it 9. I think.
Was
personally.
it how many calories was it
12. I
for
thought.
MFT? Oh, it was 10 for Hatchet. That's why. Yeah, I guess that might make a difference. If it would have been 9. So what? Just 75%. And so 24 times 6, 144, 75% of that is what, like 110, something like that in the 100 neighbor. So 30 calorie difference.
One bike, basically, or one round of biking.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Um,
I'll be all right. You're welcome for your fitness.
So the week 2 to week 3 transition advice, my question for you, Hunter, is they've done the test. They've done the 8x18 toe to bar with 30 seconds of rest.
Yep.
For anyone listening, those are meant to be, or listening that's not following the program, those are meant to be broken up, not unbroken. Now we've got
do 8 by
AMRAP.
18 with 30 seconds of rest unbroken.
Now we got AMRAP 2.5 minutes times 6, ski 300, 18 toes to bar, max rep overhead squat with a fairly heavy bar, 1-to-1 rest. What are you asking athletes to think about as they're making their way through this? So true misfit fashion, test, skill, in-WOD, skill, in-WOD, kind of back and forth. How should they be thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you should certainly be considering the test a little bit, but also like a little peek behind the curtain, like the Metcons. So we did the 8x18, the skill progression. That is a very deliberate progression with like the purpose of improving the test. The Metcon and interval are where the toes to bar pop up in workouts, just by nature of how long the workout had to be, what the other movements are part of that workout are. Doesn't necessarily mean those are going to follow a perfect progression, but I think you should think, so in that specific workout where you've got a ski, a set of 18 toes to bar, and then, I scrolled
Max rep
past
overhead
it.
squat, 205, 145.
Overhead squats. That's a workout where I might expect some MFT athletes to actually do, unbroken maybe in the first round, not necessarily applying the, hey, I did 2 sets I did 3 sets of to get to 18 reps in the skill progression from the previous week. I'm not necessarily expecting somebody to apply that exact same strategy just because the number is the same here. But I think instead it's more about understanding that, like, what happens to your toes to bar under fatigue, especially with a similar kind of hip closing movement in the ski. And a lot of it is just like, a lot of it has to do with like the comfort level that you are achieving in a workout. So especially with where we're trying to create a little bit of exposure in maybe a slightly biased volume. So 18 toes to bar in that workout, that's not insignificant. A lot of what we're seeking is for athletes to get comfortable just simply performing the movement, learning things like, where do I breathe? What does skiing 300 meters do to me before having to do toes to bar? Whereas the other, the test didn't involve quite as much direct interference. Whereas here you've got skiing and toes to bar, essentially the same movement as far as hip closing the hip. So I think it's more about
the legs will come into play too with those overhead squats. Heavy legs and toes to bar is a kind of an odd feeling.
Yep. I think it's more about when you're getting into the conditioning pieces, framing it in a way that you're thinking about the test. You're thinking, maybe even more so, thinking about the skill work from the week before, how you approached it, and what sort of, like, really, quite frankly, how they're feeling. Like, do you feel like your toes to bar are making progress? Do you feel like they're getting better? Can you reach for a little bit slightly bigger sets on, in rounds 4, 5, and 6 than, maybe you might have in the test, where, if things broke down seriously towards the end there, like, how can you, what is the damage control that you're able to do and stay moving in a piece like that? So, I think the real money gets made in the skill work, in the skill progression that you guys have, because the sets are going to go down, but the reps are going to go up. And that idea of improving athlete IQ, what happens when there's an open workout and it's 50 wall balls, 50 thrusters, 50 toes to bar for time, or 3 rounds of 40 toes to bar. The Masters the other year where it's 30, 20, 10 with toes to bar. Like, how do you approach those really big sets? Are you able to stay moving? Are you able to be disciplined enough to do a set, time your rest, hop back up, knowing that you are capable of doing that? And do you have that information, period? Do you know where that line is for yourself? And just going back and forth, I think, between the skill and the conditioning just allows you to kind of, okay, I'm going to hone in the skill. All right, let's put this into practice. Okay, skill, now put it into practice, and just go back and forth like that.
I also want people to pay attention to their body language with this stuff, because what happens to your toes to bar capacity, this magical moment where you snap your fingers and you're confident, is you move differently. You don't stress as much about your grip. Yeah, it hurts a little bit to hold on to the pull-up bar. Congratulations. That's like half of the sport, right? Like, midline's starting to go a little bit. But when you watch an athlete that is confident within a movement, that has decided that they've either improved on it or it's a wheelhouse movement for them, there is an uptick in the way that they carry themselves, the way that they break up the workout, the way that they transition in and out of movements. And you get an opportunity to just stack a little bit more confidence on top each time you go into it, and realize that, like, this is supposed to be really hard. So accept that before you start. And then when you're going into it, it's not like this ridiculous amount of judgment that you're placing on yourself because you're breathing heavy or your grip is gone or your midline is gone. It's like, no, that's intentional. That's how we're getting better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remember what the skill session was like in the test and all these things. And it's like, I'm getting a little better. Like, I'm going to be dangerous by the time the 9th week comes around here. And if you actually believe that, it's way different than going back into the test and being like, I hope I got a little better. It's been a weakness of mine. Like, I did work really hard this phase, but like, little bit of piss and vinegar, being added to the mix each time, and then ending up in retest week with actual confidence because you have built something. I just really love watching body language change with athletes.
If you don't feel that way, like sort of what's the point? I mean, you're not going to be pushing yourself to get better at a movement if you aren't intentionally feeling like,
yeah,
fuck,
but
this is
that
hard.
psyche of it's already a weakness. It's like, I'm weak and that's why this sucks. It's like, no, Hunter wrote the workout. That's why it sucks. Like that's the intention is what he's trying to do with the workout, right? So if you take that as a judgment of who you are as opposed to like, how do I maneuver around this? Is like intentionally a problem for you to solve.
The other point that you touched on a little bit is what happens to your movement at a certain point in the workout. And if you're somebody who, if you've ever been to a camp, we toes to bar is a pretty consistent breakout session that we'll do as far as the movement, because we see so many different ways that athletes do toes to bar. And I am like very confident that the way that we suggest is in fact the most efficient like way to do it, assuming that you actually do it and practice it and train it. But like paying attention to how you move in those skill sessions, and then does there get a point, or do you find a point in the workout where you revert back to previous movement patterns? So when Tony was up here training, we spent a phase last year really working on toes to bar, and he had a very specific warm up where it's like, where we're trying to get him away from a more scoopy kind of broken style of toes to bar that's just objectively harder, like biomechanically, and just like it's more difficult. And in the workout, first round or two, while I was, I'm working out, but I'm trying to pay attention to him as well. First round or two, toes to bar were smooth. He's executing the plan. And then as we start to get really, really tired and a little bit more sad, all of a sudden those Scoopy boys start to come back out, which is interesting because it's a less efficient way to do it, but it's such an ingrained movement pattern that it's not that I'm deferring to something that's easier. It's that I'm deferring to something that I know, and that's something that's more comfortable for me, even if like it's going to yield a worse result later on. And just paying attention to that, filming yourself during the skill sessions, filming yourself during the workout, can be really helpful to find out like where at what point do I start to break down? At what point is it when my heart rate's the highest? Is it when I've already got 75 reps under my belt that things start to go awry? What is the point at which these things start to break down? And therefore, like, okay, at this point next time I need to pay more attention to it, or I just need to be more deliberate about my movement when it comes to the skill sessions.
That physiological fatigue starts to affect the intensity of focus. Like your ability to stay in it mentally starts to break down there, and you have to be able to notice that that's happening in real time if you're going to make any change. All right, sure. Muscle up season is upon us. We tested the muscle ups, a couple of big sets, 13 by 4 on the MFT side, essentially, with as little rest as needed. I definitely, for my athletes that need a bit more of a push on the technique side, I did remove the idea of it being for time. I like the 13 by 4, but it's like the caveat is not how quick can you get this done, which would be for someone who is, like Austin, I would say let her rip. But for someone who's working on that technique, it's like, let's remove that and be like as fast as possible with all 13 sets of 4 being perfect. So that's our check-in on the skill side. That's the progression. And then this week we have AMRAP 23 minutes, some overhead walking lunges, 200 meter shuttle run, 5 muscle ups, add 1 shuttle run and 2 muscle ups each round. Obviously an ascending rep scheme is different than the test. It is different than, the nice, neat 13 sets of 4. How are we thinking about this going into week 3, having it under intensity again?
Well, my hope is that when you did the skill work the previous week in week 2 and you did those 13 sets of 4, or if you're in Hatchet, I think it's 15 sets of 3. I think it's 45 reps for that crew. But essentially, what you just said is really important. You have to recognize early on, are you someone that has very good technique and you could push the capacity here? And in which situation, like you're being very deliberate with like pushing the envelope and paying very close attention to how long your rest intervals are in between, because it does say in the instructions, like make sure you pay attention to how long you rest between things. If you're that athlete that's racing through, like you're super deliberate with knowing like, hey, I only need 25 seconds of rest between sets, and I can basically stick to almost like a every 45-second kind of vibe. If I'm someone that's more on the technique side, I'm paying attention to, all right, what is the rest period that allows me to move well over and over again and do all my sets feel the same? And that would be kind of the major goal there. As you take that into week 3, you now have an ascending rep scheme where if you have great capacity and muscle ups, basically you continue to move the same way, and moving up 2 reps around shouldn't really cause you to feel very much derailed. Obviously, when you get to the bigger sets, like if you get to the round of like 9, 11, 13, you're probably going in with a mindset of like, all right, I got to do 2 sets on these, or maybe 3 sets at most. If you're someone that has less capacity there, you're thinking about what you did last week and saying, all right, if it was 35 seconds of rest or a minute between each time I went up and did my sets last time, can I condense that down and still move just as well? Because again, one of the mindsets you have to take yourself out of when you're doing these training pieces is that I'm racing to win the CrossFit Games every time I train. If you have that mindset, you're going to rush your muscle ups, you're going to move poorly, and at the end of the phase, you're going to notice your capacity doesn't improve all that much. So it's important to recognize kind of which camp you fall into, and that you can take the skill work from the prior week and apply it to a Metcon, knowing that the intensity is a little bit higher, but the focus remains the same. Where are you in your journey on muscle ups? And are you someone that can push and move beautifully the entire time and hope to just kind of keep climbing by 2 and moving the same way? Or are you an athlete that has the skill focus and it's, hey, I know I'm going to break these up from the jump, but what does that breakup look like, and how long is the rest between? Because that is the trap you don't want to fall into. I don't care if you can do a set of 5 muscle ups unbroken, and then you can do a set of 7 muscle ups unbroken, but then you get to the 9s and you're doing 2, 2, 2, 2, and 1. It was not worth going 5 and 7 unbroken in the beginning if you're going to break them up that much later on. So it's taking the mindset of like, all right, I did skill work at a smaller rep scheme per set than I am in this test. Can I apply what I learned from last week's skill work and then apply it to this, upcoming workout? And then has that mindset remain the same, because that is how you grow.
Truth. C2 bike cube test. Challenge for anyone listening that doesn't follow the program. AMRAP 4 minutes times 4 max calories on the C2 bike. Rest 4 minutes. Gold standard for semifinals and above athletes is 400 plus calories and 320 plus calories for the women. On the hatchet side, so it's going to be our open and quarterfinals athletes, we are looking for closer to 360 plus and like 290 to 300 plus. A bit more nuance, I think, on the women's side when it comes to that. But breaking into the 90 cals per round group, I think would be a game changer for a hatchet level athlete, and then 100 plus per round. I am aware that those are very high numbers. Hence,
not supposed to be easy. Hence
gold standard. Some people weren't so happy with their score. And upon further investigation, potentially did not hit all of the aerobic C2 bike pieces within phase 1, nor 1 to 2 days a week of the MF2 stuff. I can tell you from personal experience, if you are a fast twitch athlete, when I am pushing on machines and I go back to the C2 bike, I am unable to use my fitness in the way that I am on other machines unless I am supplementing with zone 2 work on the bike. I need to have the flushing waste within my legs to be able to use my actual work capacity on the C2 bike. And I think that that's very common for athletes that push on the bike in terms of speed in a short duration. So you need to get that work done. And sometimes you need to put it in, like, if you're just the type of person that doesn't even look at the rest day work, just put it into your program on a training day. Swap out another piece, put it in there. Like, if you need the 2 days a week, you don't have to do it on a rest day. It's something that can be swapped in, and it's something that I think is super important. And what's good is our progression. So this is a little insight into how we help people personalize their programming. On the blog, every other week, weeks 2, 4, 6, and 8, you will have a piece that is directly trying to influence your cube test score. That is mandatory for everybody. In weeks 3, 5, and 7, there's non-mandatory aerobic work. So do you still need some of that over-under vibe? You need to put some poison into your legs and then get the poison out. Teach your body how to do that. So that is in there. Non-mandatory just means that it's extra work that you can add into your programming to personalize it. If you are a semifinals or games athlete, there's always going to be the choice to, like right now we're doing zone 2 work on the rower. If you need to continue to do the bike, that's fine. The bike could be now like row one day, bike the other day. But again, if you are struggling with this, if that leg pump is holding you down, it's the long, slow, boring stuff that's going to make a huge difference for you. And I think what happens is things like zone 2 come in vogue, and then they go out, and then they come back in. There's a video. Someone says that this is the way that you're supposed to do it, or that you're not supposed to do it. It's not CrossFit, whatever it is. It's in the programming for a very specific reason, and is not intended to be the kind of thing where it's like, let me check the like trending hashtags right now and see if I'm supposed to be doing my zone 2 work or not. We've taken athletes from like bottom of semifinals to multiple CrossFit Games appearances, largely attributed to dedication to getting their zone 2 work in. So it remains the unsexy thing to go sit on a bike or a rower or go jog at a pace that's not challenging. It still has massive effects on, I would say, 60 to 80% of the CrossFit community needs a healthy dose of this to excel in the sport.
I don't disagree with you, Drew, because I've had athletes that, I actually had a recent, almost come to Jesus moment with a remote client about like, hey, I know you do the MF2 work on the day I program it in your, Monday through Wednesday and then Friday, Saturday, but I've noticed you haven't put any information for Thursday or Sunday. Are you doing either of those? And the answer is like, no, I like to have a full day off, and then I typically just do the flush work from you guys because it makes you feel good. And this is an athlete who has a very high level of fitness, but like I think has a big aversion to long durations on machines and wants to effectively be able to perform at a certain level that you need to have a high aerobic base at, not only to perform well in the training pieces, but to recover from said training pieces because they have big aspirations. And I think one of the underappreciated portions of MF2 work is what building that base of fitness allows you to do in terms of recovering from your day-to-day training, and what that would allow you to do, essentially higher volume, obviously within reason, because I don't want everyone to think that if I do MF2 3 days a week, I can obviously do every single piece on the blog, but I recover better from my training pieces so that I don't have that hangover where I hammer week 1 and then week 2 I do a little bit less, and then by the middle of the phase I don't want to keep doing it, and then I get excited at the start of the next phase, and that's a self-perpetuating cycle that never allows me to really see any progress. So after having that conversation and incorporating that into the training, we recently just had a huge cube test PR, and like on par with, what you said was the gold standard for athletes, like getting very close to like what that gold standard would be for a hatchet level athlete at someone who is not particularly a huge athlete. So like, the bike does bias bigger athletes in terms of like who can push the pedals harder. So it's just kind of nice to see the proof of concept where, hey, you do this a little bit more and then look at the rewards you have in the things that I know you do care about, which is, being able to look at your cube test score and say, all right, I'm in this realm of athletes, which lets me know I'm kind of on the right path.
As a remote coach, I might start with the bike for an athlete that's really struggling on machines because it's just so black and white. Like the first time that as like an athlete who struggles with endurance stuff gets on the bike and you can tell that you've made this massive change in your physiology, you feel like Superman on the bike. I mean, you can add 100, 200 calories per hour to something, which on another machine would take God knows how long to get that capacity there. But the carryover from this work to the C2 bike is such an amazing proof of concept.
Definitely agree.
Yeah, I think when I first started doing the C2 bike MF2 stuff, it was pretty bad. It was very difficult, and like I think thinking about the MF2 work improving your cube test, like yeah, absolutely it's going to. I think you also need to frame it as the MF2 work and just the time spent on the C2 bike is going to have massive implications for your fitness overall. And I think that like
you saw huge changes there, didn't you, Hunter?
Yeah, I was going to say
Metcon-wise.
like mine, like the not even like my average wattage at the same heart rate increased as you might expect. But what was most significant was like that my like there's just essentially there's no other machine that we have that allows your lower body to be under the consistent time under tension that it is during a C2 bike session. Even an air bike doesn't provide that because the cadence is too low. On a C2 bike, the higher cadence, constant time under tension, especially in your thighs, is so significant that like after not all that long of doing it, and I did it probably once or twice a week initially, and now I'm down to basically more of like maintenance and once a week. The lower body endurance and just the fact that my legs didn't feel all that tired after things like thrusters, box jump, lunges, step overs, essentially like, I don't know, insert any CrossFit movement that uses your legs, which is essentially any CrossFit movement that isn't a bench press or a strict press. And like the recovery time, that basically the fact that those movements didn't impact my lower half nearly as much as they did before, and then the ability to kind of recover intra workout was significant. I would say the introduction of the zone 2 work for me is by far the most bang for my buck I've gotten since like I kind of had beginner gains as a CrossFitter like a decade ago. So we're talking about a very long time of training where PRs come far less frequently than they used to, but to be able to move the needle that much that quickly, I like 100% attributed to the C2 bike MF2 work and just its implications on like my fitness as a whole. Like my comfort on the bike got better. My thighs don't burn nearly as much as they do even on longer sessions on the bike. And just for athletes who are getting started, like it did take a while for that to happen. Like my legs blew up quickly, and it was like supremely uncomfortable for that MF2 session. And we recommended your heart rate to be a little bit higher at the time. So my output was maybe a little bit higher than it would have been like today if I started today. But like I said, by far the most bang for my buck I've gotten since essentially kind of the end of my beginner gains period as a CrossFitter.
Intensity drives the ability to increase your fitness. And one thing you said in your, spiel right there that I think should be really appreciated is the fact that like you could do interval work and maintain a higher level of intensity across 5 rounds as opposed to, doing round 1 and round 2 very hard, and then rounds 3 gets a little bit slower, and 4 tries to degrade quite a bit more, and round 5 it's like, this is a ceremonious round. I'm just doing it because it's just 5 rounds of my programming, instead of being like, man, I fucking hammered all 5 of those. And while I did see a drop in fitness from round 1 to round 5, it wasn't a 30% drop, it was a 10% drop. Think about the advantage that would give you if you were able to do that more consistently with something as simple as like, put your headphones on, sit your ass on a bike, and ride kind of hard for 45 minutes twice a week, not including your warm-ups and cool-downs. But think about that. That is such a low barrier to entry. You just have to be willing to buy a pair of bike shorts and sit your ass on a bike. There isn't much more that's required of that.
That's not even required on a bike shorts.
It's because you got a fucking taint of steel.
I've been training it.
Steel taint.
He only allows himself to eat MREs as his post-workout after, too.
That's what he sits on.
Sit on an MRE, warm it up, then I eat it.
Knew it.
Oh, God.
That's how you warm it up.
Those are my bike shorts.
That adds a little bit of nuance to talking about the aerobic rowing, because I had some questions about execution and volume with the aerobic rowing in terms of the MF2 sessions. So you're throwing a bone a little bit, and this is intentional as an athlete that's biasing going longer on the rower. The in-between weeks, so 2, 4, 6, 8, you get a long rowing session. Those in-between weeks, you do not have a rowing session, but that's because we're asking you to spend 3 hours roughly on the rower already with the MF2 stuff. I would like to throw some nuance in here. I do have a question for you guys, and that will then turn into a second question. But advice on the MF2 rowing. Get your strokes per minute up and your damper down a little bit, and completely ignore your wattage. Some of the amazing benefits from things like the rower and the ski erg is going to be upper body endurance, and the throw the damper up, see what you can get for wattage, and slow down your strokes per minute are not going to have the same sort of benefit. So think about what you normally row on in a successful session. Think about what your strokes per minute are, and up the strokes per minute and lower the damper. I think you'll notice a pretty big difference. Also, a lot easier to get to a higher heart rate and kind of settle in. Start at that 170 minus age if your stroke rate's in the neighborhood of 30. So question number one, we program it twice a week. So we program it on, I believe, Mondays. Yep, Mondays and one of your rest days. Who should be doing this once a week, and who should be doing this twice a week?
Once a week is for athletes who are, I guess, already proficient on the rower. Bigger athletes probably don't need twice a week as well, because you already have just a mechanical advantage. Twice a week would be obviously the opposite, and then I would also just maybe encourage quarterfinal athletes who have high quarterfinal level aspirations, or the goal
Which
to
is
get to
2.5. We'll get to that, but it's 2.5 times more likely this year that you will qualify.
Yeah, so if you're somebody who appreciates seeing their name high on the leaderboard in the open and or quarterfinals, that's going to be the only machine that we're going to see. There's no reason that you shouldn't be comfortable on the rower come open and quarterfinal season.
Yeah, I think of the rowing machine as being one of the most effective training tools we have. Obviously, we talked about the C2 bike's value in terms of creating time and retention on the legs, but when it comes to fitness as a whole package, if you were gonna buy one machine for your house, it's probably the machine you would want to buy as a rowing machine, due to the the power it can generate, the endurance it can generate, and kind of anywhere in between. So I look at that and I ask my athletes, do you feel like that's your best machine? And if that came up, regardless of what the test is on a rower, that you could finish in a high percentile relative to your peers? If the answer is no, that's the answer. You need to spend time on that thing. And, if you can get yourself on that machine for an entire phase, you can kind of deal with the mental suck of it's not comfortable to sit on a rower's seat and have your, hinge at the waist, scaps go forward, back gets a little tight, a little uncomfortable, but
My fingers hurt.
yeah, your fingers hurt. You got to tape your fingers for a little while. If you can get over the stress that might cause you in terms of all right, I'm a little uncomfortable, think about the benefit of being able to quiet the noise that is that discomfort, and then the fitness that will come with it. I have never met anybody who has done math on a rowing machine multiple times a week and not seen a tremendous spike in their fitness.
Fuck, you do math on a rower often enough, there ain't no rowing piece that's gonna
Talk about
be
bravery.
as shitty as that. To
That'd
be
be the
clear,
bravest
I make
existence I
fun
could
of I say in jest my fingers hurt, but an MF2 row that blows. That sucks. I would rather ski than row. But the benefit that you get, I think there's a massive. I think maybe the most important part of the rowing math is just the comfort level you get on the most used machine that we have in CrossFit. And it's you do enough 45-minute rows on there. There ain't no distance short of, a 10K that you're scared of. A 10K is obviously creeping up on that same time domain, but even then it's it's not going to be that long for most listeners, or for a lot of listeners. So the comfort that you gain and just the exposure therapy that comes with sitting on that bitch for a long time is significant.
Yeah, if that idea sounds terrible to you, you probably should do it. I mean, that's a really easy kind of litmus test for whether or not if you don't like it, you probably should fucking do it. That's a really easy kind of self-assessment.
Well, an athlete's job, and in your instance, sure, who you're talking about, it's also the coach's job, but an athlete's job is to close the gap, right? here's where we are, here's where we want to be. Someone who doesn't like being on a machine for a long period of time has a self-imposed like fucking canyon that they're just staring into and being like, this seems like the right decision. It's going to fuck you up if you don't desensitize yourself to this stuff and realize what kind of benefit you can get from it. Like if you are presented with a gap that's that large and you're not figuring out how to narrow it, like at the end of the day, like what the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Shout out to Misfit follower, DM'd me in Discord, Chad Scott. He did something that I like to say, seeing the forest through the trees. People get really wrapped up in their 1 rep max, especially with the back squat, which is kind of funny because it's not in our sport basically ever. But this idea of, we really try to harp on it, like your ability to lift moderate to heavy weight for multiple reps is significantly more important in the sport than your 1 rep max. And while his 1 rep max, you know, I don't know if he actually tested his 1 rep max. You get the opportunity to go pretty damn heavy towards the end of this. But one of the things that he did notice was that his 3 rep max was done, or 10 pounds heavier than his 3 rep max was done for multiple sets. And he, I think, potentially messaged me because he had a mindset shift there and realized, like, if I'm going to go in and do 9 back squats, you know, beyond where I would normally be able to do 3, obviously that is a big change and something where I can then take that and bring it into an actual workout. So anytime someone starts to really buy into these things that are, you know, maybe easier said than done, got to throw them a shout out for sure.
Yeah, you should take some time occasionally to go back through your notes and read prior experiences and use that to put, you know, wind in your sails when you're having a rough go. Like if you have a bad snatch day, but you look back and you used to be able to do 12 handstand push-ups and now you're doing Metcons with 15 or 20 in them, like that's fucking huge. That is a tremendous improvement. And I think people get lost in the sauce because it's not a cool, sexy 1 rep max on Instagram. Like that in our sport does get tested, but extremely rarely. It's way more beneficial to see 50 more watts on a rower or being able to do sets of 10 chest to bar pull-ups where you could always do 5 before. Like that is way more valuable. And I think it's a practice that most people don't practice. Essentially, they don't go back and look through their notes and go, all right, look at the growth that I've had. It's in this moment right now. Fuck, I can't do this. This sucks. It's like, no, take a break, finish your session, and go back and review what you've, you know, how you've grown over the last phase, 6 months, year, 2 years, 5 years, however long it's been. And that'll hopefully remotivate you to realize that if you keep putting your head down and getting to work, you're going to see the same progress. It just, progress doesn't go on the time, doesn't always work on the timeline that we want.
I've been on the other side of that, and the grass is not greener. It sucks getting your ass handed to you in every single Metcon and being like, yeah, but I can do one thing for 1 second better than you. It sucks. All right. Couple of rundown topics here. Masters athletes, 200 of them, or 25%, could be over 200 people, are going to make it to semifinals this year. I believe that is also the same for teens. That is a massive change. I believe it's similar to how they used to do AGOQ. Am I making that up?
No, that sounds right.
Pretty similar. And then really exciting, 40 and 40 are going to the CrossFit Games, which they, as far as I could tell, are branding the masters and teens, which I think is really important. Up to 50 plus. Teens are 30 and 30. I don't think people realize what it does for the actual sport and divisions, and not just like everyone obviously realizes now I have a better shot. People are going to think about themselves initially, but as someone who, you know, my livelihood depends on how well the sport continues to grow. I love that we're going to get some fucking parity within these divisions. It's top of mind. Caroline did a competition last weekend, and small division, not much parity, and like first, second, and third is like, you come in like second or third, you're like, oh fuck, like I might not win now, which should not be the case in our sport. You should have finishes that, obviously, if you're remaining, you know, inside the top 10, that's fantastic. But but when we go into this, we're going to see a better competition at the games for teens and masters because there are so many modalities that are being tested, and now there are people that can throw their hat in the ring on all of these different things. You got to think about what would have happened when you have something like a 1 rep max lift, or you have something like a 5K run. You get into those single modality things, and the leaderboard can just be thrown up in the air. And then it's like, as the person who came in second or third or fourth or fifth, what if that weakness for the person that came, that beat me within this came up when there was parity and they dropped all the way to 17th in a workout and bombed on points? So,
I mean, you could look at Roy's performance.
Really big change.
You could look at Roy's performance from 2022. He came in second at the CrossFit Games, and his worst placing was 6th. Right? 10 people, you take one mediocre score, and again, that's still incredible, but you take a 6th, and sorry, doesn't matter what you do, there aren't going to be enough people between you and the top to create that separation where there's now parity in the sport's interesting because, it's it waters it down to the story is kind of told pretty close to the beginning of the competition. And you look at those athletes, on, let's say it's Thursday through Saturday, you look on Friday and you look, all right, pretty balanced first, third, fourth. It's unless they absolutely bomb one, this competition's sort of over. And that doesn't make for an intriguing sport. And you don't have the opportunity for, when you only have 5 to 7 tests for enough jumbling of the leaderboard to make for a good story. And then it doesn't really make for as good a competition as it does when, there are 13 or 14 tests and there are athletes there that have, proficiencies in random things that can really shake the leaderboard up.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add on that other than I'm glad they branded it as such. That was when I looked at the press release statement, I was very interested to see the actual wording, and it was CrossFit Games Legends Competition or CrossFit Games Fittest Teen Pit Teen Throwdown. I don't know, there's 17 words on the tagline, but it said CrossFit Games, and it said CrossFit Games, and that's what matters for those athletes.
It'd be so cool if they told him when it was or where it was.
It'd be sick. Nah, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either.
Unknowable.
There's a lot of hubbub around the whole open, and it's 3 weeks still, but the quarterfinals is now 25%, and it's
4 weeks.
Basically the open. Do we care? Is that I don't know, there's a lot of knee-jerk reactions that kind of made me want to take a nap.
I think the major reaction is CrossFit's trying to take money, and
but you don't have to sign up. People don't really participate in quarterfinals. Half of the people that qualify participate. We have a bunch of people here.
Yeah, sure.
When Will is okay, I'm definitely going to give CrossFit.
Yeah, but he
my
also
money
doesn't do the workouts. I don't know that we have. I don't know how many athletes we have who don't pay to sign up. But
we'll find out this year.
Do the
We're going to have a
workouts,
lot of people qualifying this year. Our whole fucking gym's going to qualify.
I think one of the major rubs I heard too is just fuck floor plans. So quarterfinals, we're setting up to run 2 athletes through a workout. It takes up 3/4 of your gym. What the fuck are we going to do here when it's, all right, congratulations,
That is
50
true.
people are now. But I did read somewhere where it's
They're not going to watch your videos. They can't.
Well, they didn't watch them last year when there was less, so they're not going to watch them when there's more. But the idea here is unless you plan on advancing to semifinals, they're basically saying then you need a floor plan and then you need a video. But if you don't plan on advancing to semifinals, you don't need those things. It's just hard for, as the affiliate owner, to be you don't have a fucking chance. Don't bother. That's not a good, prospect to throw out there either, because there are athletes who come up in the ranks and they might be 5 years from that. And if you tell them on year 1 of that 5-year journey, there's no fucking chance, they might decide not to continue further and keep pursuing that, which I think is kind of a bummer. So it's double-edged sword almost.
Well, there's a difference between telling him you don't have a fucking chance this year and saying you don't ever have a fucking chance. But
I agree. But
yeah, I actually didn't think about that as you're saying that they're not requiring you to do. Do we know that they're not requiring you to use a floor plan?
I read. Hold on, I gotta go read the thing again. I'll get it one more time. Keep talking.
Either way, I actually didn't. I hadn't thought about that, but now it's if you've
supposedly the workouts are going to be lower skill and simpler. That
sucks.
So
That sucks.
What does that
That
do?
sucks.
What does that do to the open? What are we going to see even more accessible
Yes.
and even simpler open?
What does that do to semifinals if the quarterfinals tests are lower skill and
and they're taking
simpler?
less people.
Right. What does that make semifinals look like?
Yeah. So that now just requires the open and quarterfinals to be a little bit more balanced to get the right people to semifinals. But yeah, where I was going with that was the literal logistical burden on affiliates. If you've got now previously had 5 to 10 athletes who qualify for quarterfinals, and now you have 20 to 40 who qualify for semifinals, it's like, okay, probably going to say goodbye to the GHD, probably going to say goodbye to the rope climb.
Or put them at the end of workouts where people can't get to
put them at the end of the workout when you're not going to get there anyway. Like, what does that do to the programming? And I don't think, like, I think you could still make a perfectly well-rounded test without a couple of nuanced movements in there. But it's honestly, like, it's one of those things where it's like, how many more fucking times are we going to change this format?
Depends on if they fire Castro again.
Well,
I mean, he just came back and
how many more fucking times are we going to fire Castro and rehire him? Like,
That's what I mean,
it's all like, and I have no problem. I like pretty much everything Dave has done for the sport, but you do have to wonder, like, people are getting fucking tired. I'll be curious to see what the open registration numbers look like, especially with their goal of 412 billion CrossFitters by 2026. Like, I'll be curious to know what registration numbers look like this year.
We have all 7 regions are back to 40 and 30.
So smaller semifinal field.
The
what do
teams,
you mean 40 and 30?
40
teams.
individuals, 30 teams. The teams makes a whole lot of sense to me. There's some teams that maybe I'll just, maybe
we're not qualified to qualify.
Yeah, something like that. I'm scared about. I couldn't tell what Boz meant, but it seemed like he meant that he was just talking about the people qualifying for semifinals. I haven't seen any information on how many people qualify out of the semifinals. Obviously, 40 divided by 7 is not 10.
Are you sure?
So if they go back to the same amount from each place, that's going to be bad. Because I don't...
Have they released the rule book? They didn't release the rule book with that announcement.
Rule book's not out yet.
February 1st, it comes out.
For speaking to a fringe semifinals athlete, right? The person that lives in the 60 to 40. They're listening to this.
Fringe, like just qualifying for semis or just
last year they qualified. Yeah. This year they can't because they've chopped it down.
Yeah.
So we think about that athlete, and then we think about it from their perspective of whether they like the programming being simpler or want it more complicated. Obviously, we know a ton of athletes that would want it one way and a ton of athletes that would want it another. I'm going to say that I don't give a fuck that they're doing this to you because you're better than that, and you need to, once again, like, bridge that gap. That's there, right? If you are an unskilled athlete, you need to become more skilled. If you are super skilled and need the program to be, a little bit gimmicky,
work harder.
And that's a fucking problem within your fitness. And over a long enough time horizon, you being mad because the programming isn't like advantageous to your strengths and weaknesses is a problem and will come back to bite you in the ass within the sport itself. So it is a blessing in disguise that you are being required to be ready for just straight up fitness tests, because go check the leaderboard for straight up fitness tests at the top. Same fucking people that you would think it's going to be. Complicated as hell, same fucking people that you think is going to be. And that is a testament to them realizing what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and working on that. So while, like, I want you to qualify probably more than anyone, I don't want it to be because either the program was exactly how you wanted it to be or because they let more people in. I wanted it to be because you earned that spot. Like, you don't want to be the 59th person to get into semifinals. It's not that fun.
Just go in there to collect a T-shirt then, or what they used to say. I don't know if they have T-shirts anymore. Maybe it's like a ballpoint pen, but that's not a good experience. Here's your semifinal ballpoint
Get some
pen.
Noble socks.
Yeah.
Oh, sponsored by Bic.
You get 10% off your order of Noble, $600 or more.
Oh my goodness.
Ballpoint.
Lovely. You guys have anything else on the changes? Any thoughts?
No one cares that there are fewer. It fucking sucks.
Get better?
Sorry.
Just don't. Yeah, I don't
Next year, get
like
better.
that shit. Like, just
Maybe there's 100 next year. Like, it's ebbed and flowed every year. Like, and like
Everyone gets to go next year.
Everyone
Fuck.
gets-
Yes,
oh, you
it's
just
my year.
identify as a semifinals athlete.
Fuck.
It's the open semifinals.
I identify as a CrossFit Games athlete. I'm
are.
going to
It's
show up
interesting.
and compete.
I don't do this very often, but I do want to give a shout out to Brian Friend. I subscribe to his Patreon. Brian, I don't know how the content is. I've never looked at it. Someday I'll have enough free time to look at the content, but I do it because of the value that he provides to the community. And I'm assuming him flying all over the fucking world all the time to go to all these competitions is partly supported by his Patreon. It is only a few bucks. And when I was trying to find out this information in a clear and concise way without a shitload of typos, you just go to his page on Instagram and it's completely laid out, and the numbers are actually correct. So I would basically just say shout out to him, and if you have a few extra bucks, go subscribe to his Patreon, and maybe the content's also good on there, so that would be cool. But that's just one of those things where if someone's providing value to the community, I like to support it, because he's definitely makes it a lot easier to figure out what the fuck is going on with all these changes. Okay, I had one more topic. I'm gonna leave it. We're not gonna
Save
do
it.
We're gonna save it. You know what? I'm gonna tease it. I'm gonna tease it for the next episode. I think the way that Hunter programmed the
naughty.
snatching for Team Misfit can be a proxy for people to understand how to personalize different sessions within weightlifting, within skill, all of that. You guys actually alluded to some of the benefits of the way that it was programmed earlier in the episode, but I typically come up with podcast ideas when there's like a Venn diagram of something we've previously talked about, and then a really good, like, actionable representation of that. So we talked to Paige about the power lifters and how they approach reps and how they warm up and how they do these things. And then I felt a real like vibe over the last month plus here at the gym with how the snatching was taught and how people were able to progress in it. So that's a tease for the next episode. And
Intriguing.
Final thoughts, not going first.
My biggest note to you all with the programming, at least for the muscle up type of work, is just being super deliberate with paying attention to things more than just like that was hard. I really want you to double down on like paying attention to how rest periods go, and I want you to be super deliberate with like how long they are from round to round to round, because I know I asked for a ridiculous amount of sets, like 13 sets in Skillworks, a lot at once. If you just do the work and note your final time, and that's the extent of your like notes, you're missing out on a lot of what could be gained from that session. So that goes for what I wrote. I think that also goes for what Hunter wrote with the toes to bar. But I really do think when I work with athletes, I look at the their notes about training. I'm looking more against like how things went and how long rest periods took and where it got hard or where it was easy or what felt like it clicked today, more so than time. And I really challenge you all in the community to spend more of your assessment digging into that type of stuff, because that is where the athlete IQ truly grows. Not, I can do 10 bar muscle ups today, and last time I did bar muscle ups, I could only do 8 bar muscle ups. Like, use that to your advantage and spend time doing that. And that can also, like I said earlier, be the wind in your sails when you're having a rough day, when you go back and look at your old notes of, hey, I could only hold 1,200 watts, or wow, 1,200 watts, that's a lot, 1,200 cals on a rower 6 months ago, and now I'm routinely holding 1,350. Like, pay attention to that stuff.
Get your C2 bike mathing in, C2 bike MF2 work in. Get yourself some thunder thighs, get yourself some fitness, and
Build
and
up
see
that
what
taint.
happens. Really,
Get
like for
yourself
real though,
some gluten-free cheese raviolis for your
and
ring
some
dips.
gluten-free cheese raviolis. No,
That's
take
my
your
final thoughts.
MF2 work seriously, especially with the that C2 bike cube test will be so much easier is probably the wrong word, but you'll be much happier with your score when you spend a phase doing C2 bike MF2 work and then go retest your cube test. I'm not going to say it's going to be easier or pleasant, but I think your score is just going to be a lot better.
It'll feel the
so
same.
You'll be happier
Go
at the end.
faster.
Yeah, it's actually probably going to be way worse because you'll be able to increase your output so much. But yeah, no one thing has improved my fitness as quickly, having done CrossFit for as long as that, doing that, kind of getting that started like, what, 2 years ago, a year ago?
The ceiling that an athlete has in terms of how well they could do in the sport with their current level of skill and strength, and where they sit in that gap, to me, sometimes is this like huge void of lack of confidence. There are people that I know that could finish 50 to 75% higher on leaderboards when they get to a certain stage if they believed in themselves the way that they do in other stages. And the way that you build on that is year after year, at each stage, you continue to ask, sort of that belief of yourself. And I think the way that that gets practiced is paying attention. The closer and closer we get to the season, as we go from phase 2 to phase 3, we're paying really close attention to our mindset and our body language within workouts and asking yourself, how am I carrying myself here? Am I bringing my new level of skill, my new level of fitness? And it's one of the reasons why I stick with a lot of these progressions and this idea is because I think the adaptation that actually happens between the ears when you do focus in on something has carryover to everything else. So you have a really big opportunity to just stack these tiny little blocks of confidence week to week that end up being a really large amount by the end of the 9 weeks. And sometimes that's the difference. Like an athlete that just goes in and does everything that they're supposed to do, but doesn't believe that they're capable of sort of transcending where they've been and where they want to go, it's kind of heartbreaking because you want the athletes that put in the work, that are dedicated, to get the results. And then sometimes you see the person that doesn't put as much work in, that's just like, fuck yeah, I'm the best. I'm going to crush this. And you're like, oh boy, what if those two ideas came together? And those are the people that you see at the top of the leaderboard.
Dangerous duo.
Anything, Ted? Final thoughts?
I have not a single final thought.
What's for dinner
However,
tonight?
I hope all of our U.S. listeners enjoy their Thanksgiving because I don't think that we'll be talking to them before that.
True.
As this publishes during the week of Thanksgiving. So hope you
Happy
enjoy
gravy
your
day.
families, eat a shitload of turkey, and take some naps.
And
Did we do it?
I think we did it.
Did it.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast, and thank you to our show sponsors. You can head to properfuel.co, use the code word Misfit, scientifically backed ingredients and amounts in everything. sharpentheaxeco.com. Use your favorite athlete code. You save 10%. The athlete gets 10%. They don't know when they're going to be competing, what continent it'll be on, whether they're allowed to qualify, how much the entry fee is, whether they get a ballpoint pen. But you know what?
$1
They're
million.
going to be ready with a little extra coin because you supported them and Sharpen the Axe. And also head to misfitathletics.com for your individual programming needs. And teammisfit.com. Phase 3 gets started today. Get signed up as soon as possible. We'll see you next week.
fuck, how much is a Noble ballpoint pen?